Hi, welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. And I'm actually up and about and much more able today. This cold is finally peaked. I'm on the way back. Still not 100%, but God, better than yesterday. Now, we're going to have a look at the problems besetting the SNP, because at the moment, there seems to be a lot of infighting. A very uncivil war is taking place, and it's perhaps not surprising, given the results. But it seems that this is an opportunity where scores are being settled, and people are sort of taking back control of little fiefdoms they lost under Sturgeon, where she sort of accumulated all the power and all the rights and all the sort of ongoing power base that she felt was rightly hers as leader. But of course, it shouldn't. It should be much more diverse, much more thinly spread. Power should not rest in one person. And I think the SNP are finally, eventually, beginning to learn this. The humiliation of Thursday is starting to wear off. They're recovering from the shock. It's those five phases of grief. They've gone through all the sort of denial and anger and that, and they're at the acceptance stage now, I think. And so they accept that this has happened, but they've also got to accept that things have to change. It was only back in May when John Swinney, freshly elected, the young boyish figure, leapt from nowhere to become the party leader. And his big promise was one of unity. He wanted to unite the party. And that's not what's happened. He's now dealing with a party that's split on several factions. This claim he wanted to unite is a forlorn dream, and it's a dead dream. He's woken up now to the reality that the SNP is not going to unite. It's too far gone. You went from 48 seats to 9. That's always going to be difficult, and there's always going to be accusations that it was his fault because his campaign was always based on that agenda of independence rather than the agenda of dealing with today's problems, because it wasn't a referendum, no matter how hard they wished it. If wishes were horses, we'd none of us walk, but of course it isn't. And the air, as I say, is thick with backstabbing and bloodletting as previous enemies who were quiet, what was the word, wished for independence, are now not so quiet. They're coming out and they're calling it as they want. We've had Alex Neil the other day coming out and saying it's time Swinney went. He's old school. You need to get someone like Kate Forbes and Stephen Flynn basically to become like a joint leadership, similar to the way that the Greens have a joint leadership, and run there, have fresher, younger blood coming in, not stuck, not trapped even by the old school thinking of Nicola Sturgeon, John Swinney and people like them. And of course, he's right. Without change, you are doomed to extinction. Evolution is survival. But if, Neil aside, there's not many calls for Swinney to go, I think it's simply because he's been in the post too short a time. But that isn't going to last forever. The honeymoon's over. But I think already there are starting to become musings of change again. Those sort of muted whispers will grow. And there will become just claims of people just basically calling out and saying it must go. But you've got to look at the problems. They've got plummeting polls. Nobody's supporting them. You've got several police investigations. You've got massive, massive problems with financing. And they can't even point to their record. Their record is appalling. It's the most mediocre record. It's not even mediocre. It's bad. It's bad. They claim, and they are right in saying they've spent more per capita on NHS and health than any other part of Britain. If that's the case, why is it so bad? It's because obviously they're not spending it wisely. They're wasting it. It's pointless. If you're wasting money, that's worse than not spending it. And it isn't just health, it's education, it's transport, it's everything. They've got an appalling record. Nothing can do. I don't think anything can save them. I mean, no, I don't think anything can save him in the long run anyway. I think the indie dream is dead and people are starting to wake up to it. Sure, you're going to still get the wide-eyed loons, but I think increasingly more and more people see that it just isn't going to happen and it's a pointless vote now. You need someone to change the world today, to make Scotland better today, not to promise jam tomorrow. And that's all they do. But if you're losing your biggest majority, Fife, you're walking into your biggest majority and losing that, you know as a party, you're in deep, deep trouble. But who do you blame? Because ultimately, yes, Sweeney is there, but it isn't his fault. Yes, he's been there in the background for years, but it isn't his fault. Because who created the division? Who created the hatred? Who created the obsession? Where you don't disagree with someone. If they don't agree with you, it's not a disagreement. You have to hate them. That, of course, was Sturgeon. She brooked no challenge. And the power diminuted into her. It titrated, filtered. All power became her. The entire party became monolithic and was formed in one person, Sturgeon. And of course, Jim Sillars was quite right. You know, what did he call her? Stalin's wee sister. He was right, because Stalin had absolute and total power as well. Nobody dared stand up to him. And that was what it was like under Sturgeon. And that's where, of course, the rot set in. And I've got to say, just personally, I thought it was absolutely wonderful watching her face on election night, sitting next to George Osborne, wasn't it? And they showed the exit polls, and you see her stunned face. And then, of course, it was all the Tories' fault or something. Who cares? The only thing is, you had Ed Balls on the other side of George Osborne. So balls on one end and talking balls on the other. So, you know, I thought that was quite ironic. But the SNP has lost its way. It's got no purpose. It's got no funding. It's got no support. And I think soon it won't exist. I think it's doomed. And come 2026, I think that that rolling failure of the party will wrap itself up in Holyrood, and they will cease to have any significance whatsoever. That, of course, would be ideal. And then people with real talent, you know, the likes of Joanna Cherry, of Fergus Ewing. Sorry, Fergus, just temporarily forgot your first name there, dear heart. They, of course, firmly believe in independence, and that's fine, that's their right. No one is denying their right to believe in it. But these are talented, clever, well-liked, popular people. They deserve more. I would rather have Joanna Cherry and Fergus Ewing as my MP or MSP than any of the others, in just about any party, to be fair. So if they were to stand, if the SNP ended and they were just standing as either independents or as members of another party, I think Fergus would probably, he's more Lib Dem really, isn't he? And Joanna Cherry, I think she's a natural Tory, to be honest. But why not? They'd get voted in because people like them. People understand them. But as part of a toxic party like the SNP, I think they're now doomed. They must consider their future. A lot of them must. Anyway, thanks very much for listening. I'll stop there. As I say, it's a dead party walking. And come 2026, we must do everything we can to repeat 2024 and get them down to 9 seats or fewer. Down to you, good people. I think a pigeon's just landed on my roof. 2 of them. Oh, God. It's too early in the morning for pigeon sex, and yet there it is. Anyway, thanks a lot. Bye.